Maya Tillman ironed her black blazer twice the night before. Not because it was wrinkled. It wasn't. She ironed it because it was something to do with her hands at 11 o'clock at night when sleep wasn't coming and the morning felt too large to think about directly. She pressed the fabric flat, and flat again, and her mother's voice came to her the way it always did when she was preparing for something hard. Asterisk twice as prepared. Half as surprised when it doesn't matter, asterisk. Her mother had said that so many times it had become less of a warning and more of a weather forecast. A thing you noted, packed for, and drove into anyway. She set the alarm for 4:30. She was on the road by 5. The drive from Macon to the courthouse in Hargrove County was 3 hours and 12 minutes, and she had added 45 minutes of buffer because she understood, in the bone-deep way that certain people learn certain things, that being late was not an option available to her. Not in the way it was available to others. Other people could be 5 minutes late and have it mean nothing. For Maya, 5 minutes late meant something. Everything meant something when you were a black woman walking into rooms that were not built with you in mind. She arrived at 7:42 in the morning. Court did not begin until 9. She sat in the third row and arranged her folder on her lap. It was a good folder, dark blue, professional, with color-coded tabs separating each section of documents. Her client's name was written on the front in her cleanest handwriting. Marcus Webb. 31 years old. 8 months waiting for a hearing that kept getting pushed. 8 months of a life on hold while the system moved at whatever pace the system felt like moving. She had worked on this case for 4 of those 8 months. She knew every page of it. The courtroom filled slowly. Lawyers in suits who knew each other and talked quietly near the windows. A family in the gallery, pressed together, the mother holding a tissue she hadn't used yet. A court reporter setting up equipment with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times. The bailiff, a broad man in his 40s with the particular kind of settled comfort that came from spending years in a room where everyone eventually did what you told them, standing near the side door and scrolling his phone. Maya watched all of it and clicked her pen. Once. Twice. A quiet rhythm. She was not nervous, exactly. She had been in courtrooms before. She had argued motions and filed briefs and stood at counsel tables and addressed judges, and each time it had gotten a little more ordinary, a little less like walking a tightrope over something she couldn't see the bottom of. But it never became completely ordinary. There was always something underneath, a low hum, a background awareness of how much was riding on how she carried herself. Not just for Marcus. For the version of herself who had sat in a billing office for 6 years at night, entering numbers into spreadsheets, and spent her days in law school with textbooks held together by rubber bands because the good ones were too expensive to buy new. She had taken the bar exam twice. The first time, her mother was in the hospital. Diagnosis came in March. The exam was in July. Her mother told her, from a hospital bed with tubes in her arm, that postponing was not a discussion they were going to have. You will go, her mother said. And when you pass, you will tell me every detail. She did not pass the first time. She told her mother that detail too. Her mother was quiet for a moment and then said, "Good. Now you know what it feels like. Go again." She went again. She passed. Her mother was there for the ceremony. She sat in the front row in a blue dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, and when Maya's name was called, she did not clap politely. She clapped the way people clap at churches when something true has been said out loud. That was 14 months ago. Maya clicked her pen and watched the clock above the courtroom door move toward 9. At 8:55, the bailiff, Officer Dale Hutchins, according to the nameplate she had noted when she came in, put his phone away and began moving through the gallery. He was checking credentials. It was a routine thing, ordinary courthouse procedure, and Maya watched him work his way down the rows with the measured patience of someone who had nowhere else to be and no uncertainty about his right to be exactly where he was. He reached her row. He looked at her folder. He looked at her blazer. He looked at the empty seats on either side of her, briefly, as if calculating something. "Ma'am." He said it in a flat tone that had no particular hostility in it, which was almost worse. Pure flat indifference, the kind that didn't need to be cruel because it had never once considered that it should be otherwise. "This seating is for authorized parties only." Maya looked at him. She kept her face the way she kept her blazer, smooth, pressed, giving nothing away. "I'm authorized," she said. She held up her documentation without standing. A deliberate choice. She had learned a long time ago that standing too quickly, moving too fast, responding with too much energy, all of it got read in ways she didn't intend and couldn't correct afterward. So she stayed seated and held the papers out in a clear and steady hand. He didn't look at them. "I'm going to need you to step out," he said, and there was something in his voice now, not meanness, but certainty. The certainty of someone who has decided and is simply waiting for compliance. The row behind her went quiet. Someone in the gallery coughed. Someone else shifted in their seat, and the creak of the old wooden bench was the loudest thing in the room for a moment. Maya stood. Not because she was wrong. She was not wrong. Her credentials were in her hand, clear and official, signed by the Bar Association and dated and completely in order. She stood because she understood something that took years to understand, that this was not the moment. This was not where the argument happened. This was not where anything useful could be won. The argument, if there was one to be had, would happen at the right time, in the right place, in a way that could not be dismissed or misread or turned around on her. She walked out. The door closed behind her. The corridor outside courtroom 4B was long and white and lit with fluorescent lights that hummed at a frequency just below the level of something you could complain about. A functional, indifferent hallway. The kind that existed in every courthouse she had ever been in, as though the architecture itself was designed to remind you that the business of this building was not your comfort. She stood with her folder against her chest. A court clerk walked past and didn't look at her. A lawyer in an expensive suit walked past and didn't look at her. A woman in handcuffs, escorted by 2 officers, walked past from the opposite direction. The woman looked at Maya. Maya looked back. They held it for just a second, 2 people in a hallway that wasn't designed for either of them, and then the woman was gone around a corner and Maya was alone again with the fluorescent hum. She counted 30 seconds. She knew they were 30 seconds because she counted them. One number at a time, slow and deliberate, the way her mother had taught her to count when she was small and something felt too big. Asterisk count to something. It gives the big thing somewhere to go, asterisk. At 28, she thought about Marcus Webb, who had been waiting 8 months for this morning. At 29, she thought about her mother's blue dress. At 30, she opened the door. She walked back into the courtroom, and the quality of the air changed the moment she crossed the threshold. She felt it, the slight shift in attention, the way a room adjusts when something unexpected has entered it. Hutchins saw her immediately. His hand came up, reflexive, the automatic gesture of a man in a uniform who has learned that raising a hand stops things. She did not stop. She walked the way her mother had always walked into difficult rooms, not rushing, not performing, not making a show of anything. She walked with the specific and quiet authority of someone who had already decided that the previous 5 minutes were over and the next part had begun. Past the gallery. Past the bar. Past Hutchins, who said something she didn't hear because she was already beyond him. She reached the counsel table. She placed her folder down. She looked at the judge. The Honorable Patricia Renard was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses that she wore near the tip of her nose. She had been watching since the door opened. Maya could see it in the way she had set down her pen and turned slightly in her chair, the posture of someone paying full attention. "Good morning, Your Honor." Maya's voice was even. It carried without effort to every corner of the room, which had gone very quiet. Maya Tillman, appearing for the defense. "I apologize for the delay. I was asked to leave." She did not explain further. She did not gesture at Hutchins. She did not make a face or raise an eyebrow or do anything that would allow the moment to become about her feelings rather than the fact. Judge Renard looked at her. Then Judge Renard looked over the rims of her glasses at Officer Hutchins. It was a long look, the kind that had nothing additional to say because it had already said everything. Hutchins stood very still. "Miss Tillman," Judge Renard said, and her voice was even too, but warmer. "Welcome. Please be seated. Let's proceed." The room exhaled. Someone in the gallery shifted. The court reporter began typing. The family with the mother holding the tissue sat up a little straighter. And Maya Tillman opened her folder, found the first color-coded tab, and began the work she had come 3 hours and 12 minutes to do. The hearing lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. She argued the motion on the suppressed evidence first. She had anticipated the opposition's counterargument, had written it out herself the week before, as practice, to see whether she could knock it down, and when it came, she was ready for it in the way that you can only be ready for something when you have already fought it in private and won. She spoke clearly. She cited cases. She answered the judge's questions directly, without hedging, because hedging sounded like uncertainty, and uncertainty was not something she could afford to bring into this room on Marcus Webb's behalf. Judge Renard asked questions. They were good questions, precise, probing, the kind that told you the judge had read the briefs and was not pretending. Maya answered each one. At 11:47, Judge Renard ruled. The evidence was suppressed. She also granted the continuance, which gave Marcus's case the time it needed to move to the next stage with the strength it needed to move with. It was not everything. Cases were not won in single hearings, and Maya had been doing this long enough to know that the road between today and the end of Marcus Webb's story was still long. But this was the door opening. This was the thing that made the next thing possible. She packed her folder slowly. Around her, the courtroom was moving on to its next order of business, another case, another set of names, another family in the gallery pressing together with hope and worry mixed into the same expression. The machine of the court continued without pause. It did not stop to note what had happened. It simply moved. Maya walked out through the main doors into a hallway that was more crowded now, people moving in both directions, voices overlapping, the mid-morning rhythm of a busy courthouse. She passed through security. She pushed through the main doors and walked into the late morning air, which was warm and smelled like car exhaust and cut grass and the particular sharpness of a southern autumn that hadn't quite decided to be cold yet. She walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat and put her folder on the passenger side. She did not start the engine. She sat for 4 minutes, she knew because she watched the clock on the dashboard, in the particular quiet that follows something that cost more than it looked like it cost from the outside. It was not the dramatic quiet of movies. It was ordinary and a little gray around the edges. Her shoulders were tired. Her back was tight from the wooden bench. She was hungry, she realized, because she had been too wound up that morning to eat more than half a piece of toast. She was not crying. She was not triumphant. She was something that didn't have a clean name, a feeling that lived in the space between exhausted and proud, between relieved and still slightly angry, between grateful and aware that she should not have to be grateful for the simple right to do her job in a room that was supposed to be about justice. She thought about Marcus Webb, who didn't know yet that this morning had gone the way it had. She thought about the woman in handcuffs in the hallway, and the way they had looked at each other for 1 second over a distance that was shorter than it appeared. She thought about her mother in a blue dress, clapping in a way that left no room for doubt. She picked up her pen from where it had slid into the cup holder. She looked at it for a moment. She put it in her bag. She started the car. The drive back to Macon was 3 hours and 12 minutes. She did not listen to music. She drove in the quiet with the window cracked and the autumn air moving through the car and her folder on the passenger seat with Marcus Webb's name written on the front in her cleanest handwriting. There was more work to do. There was always more work to do, and she had always done it, late at night and early in the morning and in parking lots outside courthouses and in billing offices that smelled like old coffee, and she would keep doing it for reasons that were complicated and reasons that were very simple, and the simple one was this. Somewhere, right now, someone was sitting in a courtroom that was not built for them. And they needed someone who already knew the way back through the door.